Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Endgame grinders here. This is the Kafatek Monolith Flat with SSP Red Burrs in it. And I kind of just wanted to, open up the conversation about these types of grinders here. So if you already have something fairly competent, such as the Niche Zero here, what do you actually get when you switch over to a Monolith tier or Levercraft Ultra tier grinder? And at the end of the day, is it worth it? What are the flavor differences between the grinders? For me, what I really want to talk about are, what are the workflow differences between this grinder and this grinder? Because these are both single dose grinders, but why does this grinder here require so much more effort? So first of all, let's take a look at the Monolith Flat here. Like I mentioned, this is I think 2018 model with the green LED here, as well as the red SSP burrs in it. What's really interesting with this type of grinder is that you are getting to a point that I would make the argument of diminishing returns. Let's just talk about flavor differences. I think everyone wants to know, does this taste better? Does this make my coffee taste better, right? That was what I kind of wanted to get answered myself, right? Is if I went and spent $3,000 on a fancy flat bird grinder, would it make my coffee taste better? And my kind of quick answer to that is, I think it makes it taste different. And what do I mean by that? Well, so what I did is I used the same exact profile on the DE1, and I used the same exact bean, Paper Moon Coffee's Helios. I dosed 18 grams in, pulled 36 out, and what I did was I matched my flow rates, pressures, and also shot times to make sure that everything would come out in 30, 31, 32 seconds, and I just tasted them. I was like, what does this taste like from this guy versus this guy? And what I found out was that in a bean like Helios, which I'm incredibly familiar with because I've had so much of it, is that the acidic apple orange fruit note within Helios was just ever so more exaggerated in the flat here. Now, that could be preferable to some of you guys. I definitely do see a lot of people that say, like, that is not what I want. I don't want to taste that fruit note. But for me, I thought it was so much fun because I was so used to how the Niche Zero produced Helios, which was, it's a good shot, but there's nothing that really, I guess, stands out so much. Every single light roast and medium light roast bean that I tried that had a very defined fruit note that you would get out of it was ever so exaggerated more, right? So if I were to, I guess, try to quantify things in terms of fruitiness level, on the Niche, it was about a 6. It's always about a 6 out of 10. It's like definitely not super apparent. You have to kind of be looking for it. Whereas on this flat here, it's pretty apparent. It's like probably a 7, 8 out of 10 if I were to try to say, yeah, it's definitely there. Now, the thing is, that's not for everyone. For me, I thought it was really fun because I was now able to get just a ever so slight hint of that acidic, orangey fruit note within my milk-based drinks. Because at the end of the day, that's what I drink the most of. Whereas with this, I'm getting just a really great espresso and a really great latte. With this, I'm getting a little bit more of that fruit. But that's kind of the gist of the differences, in my opinion. What was also really interesting to me was I tested some dark roasts among the grinders here. And what I found out was under-extracted dark roast beans, shots that clearly didn't build enough pressure, the flows were all weird. On both of these grinders, if I had them set, produce the same exact flow rate and pressure curve, the under-extracted dark roast shots on the flat, they were less acidic. They weren't as bad, or they weren't as sour because of under-extraction. So that was really interesting there to observe. Now that I've covered flavor differences, I really just want to spend a lot of the time talking about the exact differences between this type of grinder and this type of grinder. Because you're reaching a point where with something like this, everything's already so good. I would be happy running a Niche Zero and a DE1 for forever. So for me, it's like, yeah, I don't really think I need this. But if I were to get this, I would probably get the Flat Max because why not? But I really want to spend some time talking about build quality differences, and then we'll go into the part of the conversation which I want to spend a lot of time on, which is workflow differences, as well as some observations of grinds differences. So obviously this is built like a tank. Undeniably, Dennis of Kafatek does an amazing job. We see forum posts about it all the time, but to actually have one in person is completely different. It really is just built amazing. I have zero complaints with how this is built, right? The things that make this really nice to work with is just how everything you touch on the grinder feels really good to touch. It feels like you are working with something that has been crafted. Everything feels incredibly smooth to work with. It's all machined incredibly well. Yeah, working with the grinder, whenever you have to adjust grind size, whenever you have to adjust portafilter hooks, whenever you have to remove anything, it feels good to do that. It feels, you could do it with authority. Whereas definitely on the niche, that's not the case. It's plastic. There's plastic here. There's plastic here. The aluminum shell here feels really, really cheap. And, only on the niche, there's just an on-off, right? On this, you have on-off, you have a turbo, boost your RPM up way high, and then you also have an RPM controller here. So obviously, yeah, when you spend more money, you get more stuff. Having this on your coffee cart feels really nice. Feels very commanding. Maybe it's ego boost for some of you guys. Other things too with the grinder like this is, yeah, you have portafilter hooks now. You can grind directly into your portafilter. So I briefly want to talk about retention between the grinders. Both of these grinders are amazing when it comes to retention. Like we're talking, less than 0.1 grams. What is a little bit annoying with the flat here is that there is a little chute, and also on many of the other more expensive grinders, that you need to take off and, tap or get rid of the residual grinds inside of here. What also was happening was some of the grinds here would get stuck in front of this little chute, like a little small clump would form there. So I just needed to open this and kind of knock it out. But make sure you have the grinder off and everything, as the burrs are right here. So you just want to be careful about that. But that's just an additional step in the workflow, and you kind of have to just get used to that. Both grinders, we're talking such a minuscule amount of retention that I personally don't really care as much. Definitely with these, you can use an air puffer in here and squeeze out the residual grinds. In addition to that, on this particular flat model here, you can just up the RPMs as well, and that really helps get rid of everything. So it goes from 350 RPM to 800 RPM. You definitely need to run a filter, or a ring like this. But after you put the portafilter in here, you stick the ring on, it's pretty good. Because you're grinding at such a slow speed, like 300, 350 RPM, your grinds don't really fly anywhere, at least compared to the niche. If you try grinding directly, and I do this all the time, I grind directly into the niche zero, what will happen is you'll get a bunch of grinds stuck to the bottom here. That's good and bad. I don't really mind having to just wipe that off, but that can be a little bit annoying there. Other things too to note comparing the grinders here is that the way you adjust the coarseness and fineness of it is actually really nice. So all you have to do is you loosen this portion here, and then you can adjust your grinds here. Whereas, on the niche, all you do is left and right. Some additional differences between the grinders are, the hopper. The Monolith is definitely a single dosing grinder, and we're talking sub 20 grams, it feels like. If I try to put any more, what will happen is I've had beans fly out. Literally, they'll bounce off of the burrs in here and they flew out. Whereas here, like literal popcorning, whereas here, there is an actual, cover here. And, that might be why people use a wooden cap on their monoliths. The thing is here, when you're grinding for filtered coffee, you can probably fit around 40, 50 grams in here. Fitting 40, 50 grams in here is, just have to do multiple doses. I think that's fine. Puck prep is something that you definitely need to be more aware of when you have something like a flat here. However, what I was finding was that because the grinds on here are so much fluffier than what was coming out of the niche zero here, is that when you do your WDT, it's actually a lot easier to properly sift the grinds around, get them to the right distribution pattern, and then tamp. That was what I was finding with this. It was just so much easier to do things. Compared to the niche zero, what happened, what would always happen, and I'm so used to this, is that the grinds are already fairly compacted together, and that might just be because of the conical burrs here compared to the flat. All the things I was reading up about, you're gonna get punished for doing puck prep incorrectly. That definitely was true when, like intentionally if you mess up, right? But most of the time, applying the same exact WDT methods, by the way, really good WDT video by Daniel, check it out right here. You do WDT right on both of these, it feels easier to do WDT on this one because the grinds are just fluffier. So that was kind of my experience there as well. However, I do want to mention that if you do have something like a DE1 and you're running certain profiles, you can compensate for inconsistencies within your puck prep. However, those inconsistencies may potentially be more highlighted among something like a flat bird grinder, right? But definitely most of the time you can kind of be lazy with the niche and get good results. With this, I do like to put a little bit more attention, and the results I'm getting have been amazing. Let's talk real quick about sound. So for those of you who have Baratza SETI 270s, these are a life changer. So this is how loud the Niche Zero is, just with my little lav mic here. And then here is the Monolith. And then if we up the RPMs, this is what it sounds like. So a lot quieter. Now let's run some beans through it so I can kind of show you how loud it sounds when you're grinding, as well as grind speed differences between the two, especially at 350 RPM here. I'm going to just do 18 grams. All right, so this is the Niche Zero. Get this sound here. Okay. So not the loudest, and also not the fastest. And if you thought that was slow, we're gonna look at this guy, RDT. Just gonna do this. And what I do is, oops, bean flew out. But I just want to make sure it's all covered. And then just gonna put the beans through in there, and then let's just grind in here. Here. And then what I did on this was I just do up the RPM just a little, get the residuals out, and then what I'll do afterwards is, here we go. Sometimes you'll see just a little bit of coffee in there. Just want to knock it out and then make sure that there aren't any little small grinds on the chute here, which I knocked over here. But anyway, if you don't RDT properly, I don't think I did that good of a job doing RDT. You'll get grinds everywhere, but it's not really that big of an issue in my opinion, because the quality of grinds are incredible. In addition to this too, is we have this RPM control dial here. I don't know much about RPM differences, and I didn't really want to explore this because I'm borrowing this unit, so I have to give it back. I didn't have enough time to test everything. But RPM differences are something that you can read up on the Kafatek forums, as well as there are a lot of threads. I'll try to link them somewhere so you can read up. You can compensate actually for grind size differences with RPM size adjustments. That's kind of my understanding. You might be asking, well, if I were to spend $3 grand on a grinder, what would be the best option? I think if you are someone who is looking for very accentuated fruit notes or more intense apparent fruit notes within any of their espressos, I think it's a no-brainer choice to get at least a flat or a similarly tiered grinder. However, if you don't want to spend $2,600, $3,300 or more on a grinder, something like the Niche Zero is great. Personally, what I'm eventually going to do, and probably what a lot of you will do, is you get both of them. You get a great grinder like this that does everything pretty good. Then you get something like this, when you just feel like you want more fruit note, run your beans through here versus this one. I think having that flexibility is super fun and also kind of makes the hobby really enjoyable. It's like, yeah, one day you're feeling like you want fruitiness, go for this. If otherwise, use this, right? That's kind of why some of you guys that I know have 3 monoliths or 2 flat maxes with different burrs, right? Is that burrs also do accentuate certain qualities of beans. I only have experience with the SSP Reds here, but I do understand. I'm seeing and I'm learning that, yeah, it makes a difference. However, what those differences is totally just going to depend on what you're looking for. Overall, incredible grinder. It's built super nicely. That's not to knock on the niche here, but grinders like the Monolith really do make a difference. And I feel like if you do have the opportunity to try one or purchase one yourself, I think it is an incredibly nice grinder to have. It's really fun to use and it's good to get right. While you might be punished for improper puck prep, you cannot go wrong with this type of grinder if you have good prep and you have a good enough machine. So yeah, those are my opinions and thoughts on these types of grinders. I had a wonderful time using this flat here. Thank you, Brandon, for lending me it for the past few days. I definitely am looking to probably purchase one myself. I don't know which one yet, but I might just wait. However, if you have any questions or thoughts, anything, please leave them in the comments below. As always, thanks for checking out the channel as well as subscribing. Please feel free to interact with me on any of the platforms. But yeah, you know what? Good grinder. And thanks for watching.